Welcome to the realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Enjoy listening. Ralph Whiteside opened his eyes, finding himself lying on the cold ground. His body felt numb, refusing to respond to his attempts to move. A deep chill settled over him, making every breath feel like ice. His head spun violently, and when he tried to call out for help, his voice failed him. Panic surged through him as his vision blurred, his senses slipping away. He felt as though he was losing control of his entire body. Two figures approached, women, but not human. Their skin shimmered in a shade of turquoise, their features delicate, yet unmistakably alien. Ralph could barely comprehend their presence in his current state. One of them spoke softly, her voice strangely soothing. "We will help you," she said. Ralph struggled to make sense of her words. He tried to nod, but his body refused to obey. The two women, dressed in what appeared to be medical uniforms, worked together to lift him. With practiced efficiency, they placed him onto a hovering stretcher they had brought with them. The woman who had spoken earlier, her name was Pixie, leaned closer and whispered, "You are the chosen one. We will bring you back to life, don't worry." Ralph's vision darkened even further. His strength ebbed away with every passing second. The city around them was eerily silent. There were no other people, no signs of life. Unbeknownst to Ralph, an alien virus had spread throughout the city, wiping out the population with merciless efficiency. Only he had survived, his body somehow resisting the infection. Pixie and her companion Vixie had been sent on a mission by their colony's commander, Jax. Their orders had been clear. Find the first living human you see and bring them to us for examination. The virus was supposed to be fatal to all humans, yet here was Ralph, still breathing, still conscious, though barely. The two alien nurses administered emergency treatments, stabilizing his condition before loading him onto a sleek, futuristic ambulance. The vehicle lifted off the ground and accelerated toward a distant destination. As time passed, Ralph felt the strength slowly returning to his limbs. His mind, once clouded by confusion, sharpened just enough for him to form coherent thoughts. His voice returned in a whisper. Who are you?" he asked. Pixie and Vixie exchanged glances, but remained silent. Their turquoise skin glowed softly under the vehicle's artificial lights. Their striking, luminous eyes seemed to pierce through Ralph's very soul. "Why me?" he asked again, his voice stronger this time. Vixie leaned in, a playful smirk forming on her lips. "Why are you questioning fate?" she whispered, her tone laced with something enticing. "You and us together, heading into the unknown." Ralph barely had time to process her words before a sharp pressure tightened in his chest. His body convulsed involuntarily, a wave of dizziness hitting him like a storm. Pixie immediately grabbed a small device and injected something into his arm. "Your body is adapting to our atmosphere," she explained in a calm yet authoritative voice. "You must endure it." Vixie pulled Ralph's head onto her lap, gently massaging his temples. "Just relax," she murmured. Her breath was warm against his cheek. There was something strangely hypnotic about her presence. As the vehicle ascended, the windows became transparent, revealing the city growing smaller beneath them. The sky darkened, stars becoming visible against the vast blackness of space. Ralph's breath hitched as realization struck him. "Wait, we're leaving Earth?" His voice trembled. Pixie smiled. "You're just now realizing that?" Vixie chuckled. "Sweetheart, you're already ours." The feeling of weightlessness overtook him. He could feel his body slightly lifting off the stretcher. Panic surged through him once again. "What am I doing here? Why me?" he shouted. Vixie trailed her fingers down his chest. "Because you are special," she said, her voice teasing yet sincere. "You are the only human who survived. And perhaps you might survive other things as well." Ralph's face flushed red, but fear still lingered in his eyes. As the vehicle docked inside a massive space station, he was transported to what looked like a high-tech medical facility. Advanced machines whirred and beeped around him. The air carried a faintly sweet scent, and an inexplicable sense of calm permeated the environment. Pixie began removing his tattered clothing. "We need to examine you thoroughly," she said. Vixie leaned in, her lips grazing his ear. "But first, you need to relax." Ralph tensed. "Are you playing with me?" Pixie giggled. "Maybe a little." Vixie stroked his hair. "But it's not a bad game, is it?" Eventually, Ralph gave in. The exhaustion, the warmth of their touch, and the strange atmosphere of the colony made him let go of his resistance. The medical tests were extensive. His body was scanned, his blood analyzed, and his genetic material examined. The results would take a few days, and until then, Ralph was assigned to stay with Pixie and Vixie. The two women took him to their living quarters, a luxurious space filled with soft furniture, holographic decorations, and a breathtaking view of the cosmos. It felt strangely like home. Pixie turned to him. "You can stay with us," she said. "You won't be alone." Ralph hesitated. "Really?" Vixie winked. "Of course. Why be alone when you can be with us?" Days passed, and Ralph found himself growing accustomed to this new life. He learned about the colony, its people, and its customs. What started as a strange and terrifying experience slowly became enjoyable. Then, one night, something unexpected happened. Vixie looked at Pixie with an intense gaze. "Pixie, I think I have feelings for Ralph." Pixie smiled. "That's funny because I do too." Vixie tilted her head. "Would you mind sharing him?" Pixie shook her head. "Not at all. In fact, I think it's perfect." The next day, they approached Ralph with a proposal. "Ralph," Vixie began, "in our culture, love is not about possession or jealousy. We both care for you deeply." Pixie placed a hand on his arm. "And if you feel the same, we can be a family." Ralph's heart pounded. The idea was overwhelming, but as he looked at them, these two beautiful, intelligent beings who had saved him, protected him, and now wanted to share their lives with him, he realized something. Everything he had known before, everything he had been, was behind him. Earth was a distant memory. The people, the places, the struggles, none of it seemed real anymore. What was real was the warmth in Pixie's golden eyes, the mischievous glint in Vixie's smile, the way they looked at him, not as an experiment, not as a survivor, but as someone they truly wanted in their lives. Ralph exhaled, letting go of his doubts. "I want this too," he said, finally, his voice steady. The moment the words left his lips, something changed in the air. Pixie and Vixie exchanged a look, one of joy, anticipation, and something deeper. Vixie leaned in first, pressing a soft kiss against Ralph's jawline, while Pixie wrapped her arms around his shoulders, resting her head against him. "You won't regret it," Pixie whispered. "We promise," Vixie added, her fingers trailing down his chest. Over the next few weeks, Ralph adjusted to life in the colony. He was no longer a patient under observation, but a full-fledged member of their society. The colony was more advanced than anything he had ever imagined. Floating cities, bioorganic architecture that pulsed with energy, and an intricate social system where every being played a role. Ralph trained with the colony's engineers, learning about their technology and how it interacted with organic life. The more he learned, the more he realized how primitive Earth was in comparison. Here, disease was almost non-existent, wars were unheard of, and life was built on balance and harmony. It felt like paradise, yet it was real. Despite the utopia, Ralph could feel the weight of his own uniqueness pressing down on him. He was still human, the only human, and that made him different. But he wasn't alone. Pixie and Vixie were always by his side, guiding him, teaching him, and reminding him that he belonged. One night, as they stood on a high balcony overlooking the bioluminescent city, Vixie took his hand. "There's something we haven't told you," she said, her voice softer than usual. Pixie nodded. "The Colony Council wants to meet with you." Ralph frowned. "Why?" "They believe you may be the key to something greater," Pixie explained. "Your survival against the virus, your genetic compatibility with us. It's rare, and they think it might mean something important for our future." A meeting was arranged. Ralph stood in front of the High Council. Elders of the colony who had lived for centuries, their wisdom surpassing anything he could comprehend. They spoke of fate, of destiny, of evolution. They believed Ralph's existence in the colony wasn't an accident, but a sign of something much bigger, the unification of species. His DNA merged with theirs could mean the creation of a new kind of being, one that carried the strengths of both humans and their species. Ralph was overwhelmed. The weight of such responsibility pressed down on him. "And what if I fail?" he asked. One of the elders, an androgynous figure with iridescent skin, smiled. "Failure is not in your nature." That night, as Ralph lay between Pixie and Vixie, he couldn't stop thinking about what the elders had said. He was no longer just Ralph Whiteside from Earth. He was something else now, something more. Days turned into weeks, and Ralph became more deeply integrated into the colony. He worked alongside scientists to understand his own biology, trained with warriors to learn the ways of defense, and most of all, he built a life with Pixie and Vixie. One night, under the soft glow of their floating home, Vixie held Ralph's face between her hands and whispered, "We have news." Ralph looked between the two of them, his heart racing. "We're pregnant," Pixie said, a radiant smile spreading across her face. Both of them, at the same time. Ralph felt his knees go weak. He had expected change, but not this. Not so soon. "Are you serious?" Vixie laughed. "Very." The colony celebrated. It was a historic moment, the first time a human had ever conceived with their kind. Scientists and philosophers debated what it could mean for the future. Ralph, meanwhile, was simply in awe. Months passed, and Ralph took care of them both, making sure they were comfortable, learning everything he could about their pregnancy process. It was different from humans, but not completely foreign. The day finally came. The entire colony stood by, waiting in breathless anticipation. The birth was not what Ralph expected. Instead of two separate infants, a single entity was born, one being with the essence of all three of them combined. Its form shimmered between their species, adapting, evolving, changing. A miracle. A new species. They named the child Leora, New Light. As Ralph held Leora in his arms, with Pixie and Vixie leaning against him, he realized he had truly found home. Not just a place, but a family. The past no longer mattered. The future was unwritten. But one thing was certain. He would never be alone again.